With the release of the new Fallout Amazon TV series, I really enjoyed watching the different characters interact. The show had three main protagonists that began their adventures in different locations, and they had three different paths that also helped shape them as individuals. I loved the fact that instead of just having one character, we got three. Instead of one person's perspective and history, we got three, each separate from one another. In the games, we only really get to experience one person's story, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could experience the world in all three of the characters' shoes? Quick spoiler warning now, if you haven't watched the show and you want all surprises, you should exit the video now, and some Fallout 4 spoilers as well. So, in the Fallout TV show, our first character Lucy was a happy-go-lucky, always do the right thing vault dweller. Her optimism impacted every scene and it defined her character. She grew up in a vault, separated from the daily outside world on the surface. Maximus was taken in at a young age to the Brotherhood of Steel, and he had to work his way up from the very bottom. And Cooper Howard had been alive before the bombs dropped and was a TV celebrity, and now he had turned into a ghoul with a completely different personality. He had changed from the happy individual that he was, and events had changed and morphed his character into someone more dangerous, cold-hearted, and a bounty hunter. In the show, they introduced the concept that the ghouls would have to take an inhaler of a strange, unnamed yellow liquid. The ghouls referred to these as vials. In the show, it suggested that the ghouls need to take regular doses of this in order to avoid turning feral. This is not, to my knowledge, mentioned in any of the Fallout games prior to the show, but I thought, wow, that's actually quite a good idea, and it also made me think about what it would be like to play a Fallout game as the ghoul with this feature. Maybe as a ghoul you would be completely rad resistant, but you'd be required to take these vials in order to maintain strength and your health. Basically, you get the benefits and then the debuffs as a result. Then I thought about the previous Fallout games. In Fallout 1, 3 and 4, we start off as a vault dweller. We're a human who has had a clean upbringing away from the outside world. We see the world for the first time in these games from their perspectives. In Fallout New Vegas, we're the Courier, who has lived in the Mojave Wasteland for a good amount of time. The backstory of this character is very vague for role-playing purposes, where we can sort of create our own backstory for the character. But despite all this, I felt like this was quite a safe way to start each game, and maybe Fallout 5 should feature more options. If you were to throw on Skyrim right now, when creating your character, you would be able to choose between 10 different playable races. Some of them are like Breton, Nord, or Redguard, they look more human, but then races like Orcs, Khajiits, or Argonians are fictional creatures that resemble cats or lizards. Each race has its own advantages and disadvantages. This also allows a lot of role-playing elements as the player can create their own backstory. It's one of the reasons why Skyrim has been so successful for all of these years, the ability to replay different stories with different characters and experience something unique. Skyrim is made by Bethesda, who also made Fallout 3 and 4. Then I got to thinking, why don't we get to pick a different option in Fallout? We're very much restricted to the character that the developers have chosen for us to start with. In Fallout 4, we were established as someone with a specific backstory, a spouse, a home, and even a baby boy to look for in the main story. Some people didn't like this because it took a lot of the role-playing elements away from the game, the ability to create your own backstory. You can restart the game 100 times, but you're going to have to play as the same character each turn, besides cosmetic changes. Later in the game, you can customize what faction to align with or what type of person your character will be, but you'll not be able to create your own backstory or change the introduction of the game's story. The opening will always be you running to the vault, getting tricked into the pods, going through family difficulties, and then leaving the vault. It's very structured. If you look at games like Cyberpunk, they offered 3 different paths for you to start your main playthrough. You could start as a street kid, a nomad, or in Corp. By selecting one of these starting stories, you would then be plunged into a introduction, a playthrough for a couple of hours of unique play specific to that particular background story that you'd chosen. Once you completed the basic story, you would then be brought into the main game, which would always have the same story, no matter which playthrough you'd selected. It gives you the chance to choose one of 3 starting different background stories, and then it pulls you into the same main story and the same open world map each time. And it got me thinking this: what if you could choose to play as a human, a ghoul, maybe even a super mutant or a synth? Would that be possible? If not, then what if the human had different background stories? What if we could start off like Maximus in the Brotherhood of Steel, or maybe even as a raider with a troubled past? I think it would be vital to have a unique opening story in a different area of the map to create a unique feeling for each one. It could all lead back to the same open world, the same main quest and side quest, just like in Cyberpunk, but the introduction could be different. In Starfield, you can choose many different background stories, but no matter what, you start off as a miner. You could be a world-traveling bounty hunter, but you're gonna start off as a miner. I feel like this kills a lot of immersion when it comes to role-playing. In this video, I'm going to explain what the options could look like and how they could be implemented. Please note, this is obviously just my thought process and personal opinion. You may completely disagree with everything that I say, and that's fine, but I feel like it's always good, and I've enjoyed debating ideas about video games that we love and have passion for. If Bethesda were to implement the character selection option, they essentially have 3 options. Number 1, stick to being a human, but have multiple starting life paths, like in Cyberpunk. Number 2, select from multiple races, just like in Skyrim. Or number 3, consider doing both. So let's start by discussing all the options. Quick side note, I'm a new channel, so if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And I also want to say thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed so far. It means absolutely the world. Anyway, back to the video. So starting with the human option, let's say you boot up Fallout 5 and you have 4 path options to start off as. The first and most obvious option would be to start off as a vault dweller of some kind, and it's been done in the previous games. In Fallout 3 and 4, we are brought into the world as a vault dweller. This gives us a chance to see the destruction of the world for the first time upon exiting the vault. In Fallout 3, we're born in the vault, we grow up in the vault, and finally we leave the vault when we're finally at adult age. It's a great experience and I thoroughly enjoyed it. In Fallout 4, we enter the vault and then we're pretty much out straight away. Naturally, Bethesda probably didn't want to repeat the entire story, as we would have already experienced it in Fallout 3, but the point is, we're a Vault Dweller character who is unscathed from the outside world and is about to enter the world for the first time. I definitely think this should be kept as an option in the game. If they were to offer different starting path options, Vault Dweller would be the first option and probably the most popular. This would allow us to select this introduction and roleplay as per normal as a Vault Dweller. I would expect that Bethesda has already cooked up an idea on how the Vault storyline would go this time, so I won't come up with too many suggestions, but it's the general concept that you're starting off in a vault as this character completely green to the outside world. This would then give you different unique dialogue options when speaking to NPCs, or knowledge that is not available in the outside world. Maybe we can get certain buffs to our charisma as we're well kept, or something to that effect. In summary, we start off as a Vault Dweller. It would have certain perks, attributes and dialogue options unique to this character. The second option would be to start off as a raider of some type, someone who had been brought up around rough people and been in gangs. Naturally, we will be able to change our character's personality over time, sort of like Arthur in Red Dead Redemption 2. He was raised in a gang, but over time he changed into a good person who wanted to leave the gang. We could go that way, or we could double down into a criminal lifestyle, robbing caravans, taking locations, or doing mercenary work. Again, we would have separate dialogue options unique to us being a raider, like intimidation or street smarts. We could also be more rad resistant, less likely to become addicted to chems, or more resistant to taking damage since we've been brought up in this rough environment. As we approach settlements, they may be more skeptical to opening their doors, and this would really make us think about our actions if we were trying to change our character into a good person. It would just allow us to experience something different as an opening and create our own backstory. As of right now, we're usually forced to shoot every raider on sight since they shoot us first, but it would be nice to experience things from their perspective and see why they act this way. They are humans too, and maybe they were changed over their time and just became a product of their environment. It would be up to us to determine how it would impact the character. The third type of human we could be would be from a faction. So, for example, Maximus from the TV show, we could also start off as a low-ranking member of the Brotherhood of Steel. There could be ways that we work our way up and then we get access to better gear if we have this as our starting point. Maybe receive more points into armor or weapon crafting or energy weapons. We would have unique dialogue for this character too, as we have more power as a member of the Brotherhood of Steel. But as a result, we would receive more disdain from ghouls, super mutants and even synths, as we're known to be less tolerant of them. Maybe we have more strength characteristics as we've been through training for many years. As far as how we end up getting into the Brotherhood of Steel, they can leave that up to the player to create their own backstory. This isn't solely just for the Brotherhood of Steel, as you could start off in the NCR, in the Railroad, or any other type of faction, whichever one would be the main faction that would be featured in Fallout 5. It just gives us the chance to choose something different. Or finally, we could choose to start off as a character like the Courier from New Vegas, a random civilian who has been living in this world but doesn't have any specific ties, is more battle hardened, so to speak, and has been through the wasteland through many years, but generally quite down the middle in terms of stats. Nothing too unique, and this would be the option for the player who would want to choose a character with no specific background, story or ties. A blank canvas, so to speak, as another path option. The ones that I am suggesting here are just examples, but in a nutshell, I'm saying that we should be able to choose a few different openings to the game. They would all lead to the same main story, side quests, the same open world, but just give us a different introduction and a little bit more role-playing elements. With having unique dialogue options for the characters, this would really create an immersive feeling. This would be a great option for players if we wanted to stick with humans being the only starting race. How they receive a Pip-Boy, that's the only thing I haven't worked out yet, but it could be worked into the introduction story. Having a separate introduction story is really important, as I feel it creates a lot of immersion in the role-playing aspect. If they wanted to stick with just one opening, I think they should choose a generic role like a prisoner from Oblivion or Skyrim, as this does not lock us into any specific role or backstory. When you start Starfield as a miner, it kind of breaks any type of role playing that you may be trying to do, as you now have an established backstory. So, in the TV show, Cooper Howard is a cool character and he has to do many things in order to survive and thrive within the wasteland. He's a master gun wielder and has years of experience. If we were to choose to start our playthrough as a ghoul, we would then be able to experience the wasteland like never before. Most humans would be a lot more harsh and mean to us due to our features and general disdain that ghouls have faced in past games, but we would receive other benefits to sort of counterbalance this. For example, we may become completely rad resistant since we're a ghoul. We may be able to have special abilities that are not available to humans. There would be a lot of ways to implement this and make it unique, such as special dialogue options or gaining more trust from other ghouls. In Skyrim, if you find an orc settlement, they won't let you in, unless you're also an orc, which makes a playthrough as an orc feel unique. Maybe something similar could happen in Fallout 5, where we get access to unique areas and shops that feature primarily ghouls. I really like the way the series introduced the yellow vials as well. Cooper Howard has to turn on Lucy and tries to sell her in order just to get a few vials. I think this would be a really great feature to have in a ghoul playthrough if they introduced it into the game. You would have all these unique abilities such as rad resistance or natural healing over time, but you'd need to then take some of these vials every now and then just as a counterweight. After a while of not having one, maybe your maximum health would drop, your carry weight would drop, so you have to go in search of finding more of these vials. It would reflect what happened in the show whilst also making it interesting in the game. Cooper Howard does evil things in order to obtain these vials, as they're so important, and we would have to do the same in our playthrough as a ghoul. When you really need one and a shopkeeper wants too much money for one, what do you think you're going to have to do? If you have to rob them, is it worth it in order just to survive? I think adding ghouls as a playable character would really add to the role-playing options and allow us to experience something different. We could finally drink dirty water and swim in lakes of rat-infested water. Maybe feral ghouls would be less aggressive to us. But we have to search for these vials in order to keep up our strength. This would really give us a unique experience to anything that we've had before in any Fallout game. We could also start off as a super mutant like Dr. Brian Virgil in Fallout 4, or Strong, the companion that we meet later on. If we were able to start off as a super mutant character, we would probably be able to carry more weight. We would have more health, more strength when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. We would essentially be a strong juggernaut of a character who has all the abilities needed to fight well. But then this could then be counterbalanced by difficulty in dialogue. Maybe we have a low education in the beginning and we can't convince or persuade anybody. We would be a target for most human NPCs as they live in fear of super mutants. But as we saw in Fallout New Vegas, there's a whole town of super mutants called Jacobstown. If we speak to their leader Marcus, we find out that he's actually extremely intelligent and well spoken. Maybe we could start like Strong from Fallout 4 with limited vocabulary or dialogue options, but over time we could level up and improve our speech skill, just like Marcus from Fallout New Vegas. We could also consider introducing the Nightkins as another sub-race of super mutants that have their own advantages and disadvantages. Super mutants would be the strongest characters to be in the game, so it would be the character to choose if you wanted to go and just beat the world up, but if it came to negotiating or speaking with characters, that's where the balance comes in, as the super mutants are not the most well spoken, at least not at the beginning of your playthrough. And then the final option of a playable character would be a synth. This is under the assumption that they would have synths in the next Fallout title. There are many different types of synths that you could choose from, for example a Cursor, or the old model synths like Nick Valentine, and then the newer models of synths that look and talk just like humans. Again, this would have its own starting story and it would allow us to have different abilities that we don't have as a human. Maybe our VATS has better accuracy, or we can crack computer terminals with less difficulty. There are so many ways that we can balance it. Maybe the starting story is that of a synth who starts in the Institute and manages to escape. Then as we enjoy the giant open world, maybe random events take place where the Institute comes to find us and we have to fight them off. We wouldn't need to eat, drink or sleep as a synth, but maybe we could counter this by our inability to do other things such as persuade people or swim, or we're weak to certain types of weapons. There are so many ways to balance this out so that it's a fair character, and since there are so many different types of synths, the options really are unlimited. It would just allow the player to choose something different and experience what it's like to live as one of those synths that we see and hear about so many times in Fallout 4. I guess I'm sort of covering points and then moving on pretty quickly in this video, but the general gist of what I'm saying is that it would be nice to get other options when starting a Fallout game. In Fallout 3 and 4, we have started off as a human who's a vault dweller, even in Fallout 76. It's obviously worked and both games are very successful, but maybe it would be interesting if they took some ideas from Cyberpunk and Skyrim and sort of mixed that into these games. Each playable race or starting character would have different advantages and disadvantages, so that way when you're choosing your starting character, you'd really have to put a lot of thought into it. What type of character do you want to be this time? What's most important to you as skills? What would be the most interesting experience for you to take place in? It's just a different concept and freedom for role-playing that I feel has been lacking a little bit recently in Bethesda's recent games. Fallout 4 was a great game and I love it, but the role-playing definitely dropped down. We were the character that they chose, and we were going to experience the story that they'd written in that character's shoes. It would just be interesting to have a few different starting perspectives when starting the game, and all of these options would make it unique. Also, if you are still watching, please note that this is just my personal opinion. I just thought it would be a nice idea, and I would love to welcome feedback of fans from the series. I mean, you might be watching this video in total disgust as I'm suggesting so many radical changes to the series, but know that this is not an exact pitch, it's just a concept. You can take pieces out from it and just sort of mold it into a good idea if you think there are good points here. I'm pretty sure that Bethesda will go with what they know, and just like in Fallout 76 as well, stick with just one opening, one character, the Vault Dweller. I personally play these games and think, what if? And I would love to hear what your opinions are on this subject as well. Anyway, that's it for this one. I mean, what do you guys think? Is this absolute nonsense that I'm talking? Should I be removed from the internet and sent to an insane asylum? Or do you think there's good points here or good potential ideas? Have you ever thought about this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out. If Bethesda were to implement the character selection option, they essentially have three options. Number 1, stick to being a human but have multiple starting life paths, like in Cyberpunk. Number 2, select from multiple races, just like in Skyrim. Or number 3, consider doing both. So let's start by discussing all the options.